Okay, let's try to unpack this. Imagine the biggest organization in the world at the time, the Catholic Church, and suddenly it has three bosses.
3 CEOs, all claiming to be the real leader, all demanding loyalty.
That's pretty much what happened during the Western Schism. It kicked off in 1378 and, well, it completely changed the relationship between faith and politics in Europe.
And this wasn't just a quick hiccup. It was a massive 40-year-long crisis. It all started right after Pope Gregory XI died.
And he had just done something really important, right? He'd moved the papacy back to Rome.
Exactly. For nearly 70 years before that, the popes had been based in Avignon, in France. People even called it the Babylonian captivity of the church.
So bringing the papacy back to Rome was a huge deal. And when the cardinals met to elect the next pope, the people of Rome were not quiet about it.
Oh, not at all. They were terrified the French cardinals would just pick another Frenchman and drag the whole thing back to Avignon.
So you have this chaotic scene. Thousands of citizens are basically on the verge of rioting.
Yeah, and they're demanding the cardinals choose a Roman, or at least an Italian. The cardinals later said they were basically voting under threat of violence.
And they chose Urban VI, an Italian from Naples. This is where it gets really dramatic, because Urban VI turned out to be, well, a nightmare to work with.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
He wasn't just strict, he was incredibly volatile. We have accounts of him just flying into rages, publicly insulting powerful church leaders.
He was trying to reform things, right? Curb their spending and power.
He was, but he did it with such cruelty that the cardinals who elected him became genuinely scared of him within just a few months.
So they found a way out. They used the angry mob as an excuse.
Right. They declared the first election invalid because they'd been forced. They left Rome, regrouped, and elected a different pope, Clement VII.
And just like that, the split is official. You have two men, both claiming to be the one true head of the church.
It was a spiritual and political earthquake, a complete mess.
And when we say political, it immediately split Europe right down the middle along old rivalries.
Absolutely. This stopped being about religion very quickly. Clement VII went right back to Avignon under the protection of the French king.
So France and its allies, Scotland, Castile, and Spain, they all backed the Avignon Pope.
Meanwhile, Urban VI stayed in Rome, and he got the support of England, who was always fighting with France, and the Holy Roman Empire.
So suddenly, who you supported as Pope had more to do with your king's alliances than anything else.
And imagine the chaos for everyone else. Every bishop, every priest had to pick a side. If you picked wrong, the other side could say everything you did was invalid.
That must have created so much anxiety for regular people for, decades.
For generations.
Yeah.
And you could really see the split in the two headquarters. Avignon, with French backing, was running like a modern corporation.
Right. Clement VII was in this massive palace that was built more like a fortress.
And they were incredibly good at collecting money. They had this complex system of taxes and fees all across their territories.
But they got a lot of criticism for being too focused on luxury and money, right?
Oh, yeah. Critics said they were too worldly. But their court was sophisticated, powerful, and very connected to the French monarchy.
And Rome.
Rome was a different story. It was physically crumbling. After being neglected for 70 years, the city was in a terrible state.
So the Roman popes were struggling.
Big time. They had to rely on support from places like the Holy Roman Empire, and they were constantly spending money just to repair the old basilicas and streets, trying to reclaim that historic authority.
It sounds like life in Rome was also pretty dangerous.
It was. Lots of feuds between local noble families, riots. It was hard to govern effectively.
So after years of this, the big question becomes, how do you fire a pope?
Because neither one was going to back down.
And there wasn't really a rule book for this, was there?
Not at all. The whole system was built on the idea that the Pope's power was absolute. Scholars at places like the University of Paris debated it for years.
They came up with some logical ideas, like having both popes resign at the same time.
Or holding some kind of impartial trial to see which election was the real one.
But it all came down to pride. Neither man would step down and admit his rival might be the legitimate one.
Exactly. And the kings wouldn't help, because they each wanted their guy to win. The Parisian scholars kept arguing that the unity of the church was more important than one man's ego, but no one was listening.
This idea that the church as a whole was more important than the pope, that was pretty revolutionary.
It was. And it was born directly out of this crisis.
So after 30 years of this stalemate, the cardinals decided to take matters into their own hands, which led to an even bigger mess.
A massive blunder. The Council of Pisa in 1409.
So the idea was good. Cardinals from both sides got together.
And they did something bold. They declared both the Roman and Avignon popes to be illegitimate leaders and officially deposed them both.
And then they elected a third man, Alexander V, thinking the other two would just give up and go home.
But the council had no army. It had no power to actually enforce that decision.
So the other two just refused.
They refused. They denounced the council, and the result was catastrophic.
Instead of solving the two-pope problem, they created a three-pope problem.
Europe now had three separate administrations, three groups of cardinals, three different tax collectors. It was a joke.
I think I read a quote from the time calling the church a monster with 3 heads but no body.
That's the one.
Yeah.
People were terrified. Priests didn't know whose orders were valid. It became clear that only a huge, politically powerful meeting could fix this.
And this is where the Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund steps in.
Yes, he's kind of the hero of the story. He saw that this chaos wasn't just a church problem, it was threatening the stability of his entire empire.
So he used his political muscle to force the issue. He basically made the Pisan Pope, John XXIII, call a new, much bigger council.
The Council of Constance, starting in 1414.
And this one was different. It was huge.
Unprecedented. It was held in a neutral city, and you had everyone there. Cardinals, bishops, theologians, representatives from kings, from universities, all of them.
But the size wasn't the only thing. They established a new core idea, right?
A revolutionary one. They declared that the council itself, as the body representing the whole church, had more authority than any single pope.
That concept is called conciliarism.
Yes, a direct result of the schism. It basically put a check on the pope's absolute power for the first time.
And they changed the voting rules, too, which was clever.
Very clever. Instead of voting by individual, which would have favored the Italians and French, they voted by nations. So the English, Germans, Spanish, they all had an equal say.
Okay, so with this new authority they got to work, what happened to the 3 popes?
Well, John the Techity III, the Pisa Pope who called the council, he was the first to go. He tried to run away, but they captured him, put him on trial, and deposed him.
And the Roman Pope, Gregory XII?
He saw the writing on the wall, he played it smart, he agreed to resign, but on one condition.
Which was?
That the council let him officially convene it first. It was a symbolic move to maintain the legitimacy of his papal line. They agreed, and he stepped down.
So that just left Benedict III, the Avignon guy.
The most stubborn of them all. He flatly refused to resign and hold himself up in a castle in Spain.
Well, without political support, he had nothing.
Exactly. The council deposed him, his main backers left him, and he just stayed in his castle claiming to be pope until the day he died. A pope with no church.
So finally, the slate was clean, all 3 were gone.
All 3 offices were declared vacant, and in 1417 the council held a new election with representatives from all the nations.
And they chose a Roman noble, Oddone Colonna,
who took the name Martin V. And you can just imagine the relief across Europe. The crisis was finally over. The church was united again.
But you can't have a 40-year crisis like that without some permanent damage.
Oh, the scars were deep. The papacy's reputation was just shattered. People had watched these men fight like kings over power and money.
It made them question the whole idea of one person having that much spiritual control.
Completely. And the political power had shifted. The kings and emperors realized they could influence and even force a resolution. The authority of national rulers over their own local churches grew a lot.
And that idea of conciliarism, that a council could be more powerful than a pope, that didn't just vanish, did it?
Not at all. Later popes tried to stamp it out, but the seed was planted. The idea that there were other sources of religious authority besides one man in Rome.
Some people say this whole period really laid the groundwork for the Protestant Reformation a century later.
Absolutely. It created a climate of doubt and questioning that made those later changes possible.
So what was it like for Martin V, the new pope, back in Rome?
He had a massive job ahead of him. The city was still a wreck, politically and physically.
So he had to be a builder, not just a spiritual leader.
Very much so. He spent years repairing streets, bridges, and walls, just making the city functional again. He had to restore faith in the office itself.
He also had to deal with all the local noble families who had been fighting for control while the popes are gone.
He did. He brokered peace deals and, crucially, helped create new laws for papal elections to make sure a split like this could never, ever happen again.
So Rome did eventually recover and become that center of art and culture again.
It did, thanks to his work. The church was whole, but that era of the Pope having total, unquestioned authority, That was gone for good.
The Great Western Schism is just such a powerful story of how internal politics and stubbornness can threaten even the most powerful institutions.
And it shows us that sometimes a crisis forces a compromise that changes the balance of power forever.
See you next time.